Good afternoon and Happy New Year 2025. We are right back to business here in 2025, doing it live and doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after the Guy Benson Show, now at 3 o'clock here on 790 KBC. We do all this just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Stocks kicking off the new week mostly higher today, with tech stocks leading the gains on enthusiasm about AI once again. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of just about 26 points. The index up 0.4% so far here in 2025, and that's the best start over the first 3 trading days of a year since 2021. The S&P 500 managed a closing gain today of just about 33 points, closing at 5,975. Back-to-back gains for that index, and up 1.6% so far in 25. Its best start to a year since 2018. And the NASDAQ rising. That's the star of the day here, up 243 points to close out at 19,865. Back-to-back gains for that index. The NASDAQ up now 2.9% so far this year. Its best start to a year since 2009. Under heavy security, Congress today certifying President Trump's 2024 election victory 4 years after the January 6, 2021 siege of the U.S. Capitol. Stocks gains narrowed today after the Fed Governor Lisa Cook made news, warning that the stock market is susceptible to a large decline, in her words. The Fed Governor Lisa Cook's warning that several markets, including equities, appear priced for perfection and vulnerable to large declines in the event of bad economic news or a shift in investor sentiment. Didn't do much to cool the market rally, although the Dow did turn lower. The remarks also reminiscent of former Chairman Alan Greenspan's 1996 warning of irrational exuberance. I believe he gave that speech in Los Angeles when he visited here, by the way, back in those days. While that speech did inspire a wobble in global financial markets back then, as MarketWatch notes, today it hardly marked the top. The dot-com bubble did not implode until the year 2000. We'll be discussing this shortly with a market historian live with us in studio, and that is the one and only Ken WINANS will be joining me here in just a moment. One of the first signs that President-elect Trump might be governing in a different way than his campaign suggested, out with a report today that tariffs may not be as severe as anticipated. President Trump, of course, is a big believer in tariffs as a tool to raise more cash for the U.S. Treasury. Big news today, the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announcing he plans to step down but will stay on the job in the near term until his ruling Liberal Party picks his replacement. Trudeau resigning as inflation in Canada and other economic issues keep toppling leaders around the world, it seems. The Canadian dollar, the loonie, has also been under a lot of pressure against the U.S. dollar. I just talked to some Canadian tourists in town for the Golden Globes over the weekend, and they're having it rough. Bank stocks, meanwhile, adding to gains after a top Fed banking regulator who is heading up an effort to raise capital requirements for the nation's largest banks abruptly resigned from his position while remaining a Fed Reserve Board governor. Michael Barr, the vice chair for supervision for the Fed and the leader of the U.S. effort behind the so-called Basel III proposal to lift capital requirements for banks, said he would step down by the end of next month or sooner if his successor is named. Hollywood's award season kicking off last night in Beverly Hills with the 2025 Golden Globe Awards. It was fabulous. It was great seeing everybody there last night. So some of the studio names back in focus, and a big deal in the world of entertainment today with shares of Fubo TV skyrocketing after the company announced a deal to combine Walt Disney's Hulu Plus live TV service with Fubo. Fubo stock up 251%, up nearly $4 to $5.06 a share. Shares of Ulta Beauty running higher today after hours after that beauty products chain appointed a key player in its recently announced comeback plans as its new chief executive and boosted its fourth quarter outlook. Ulta making the announcement this afternoon. Oil prices, meanwhile, posting a drop today, their first in 6 sessions. Oil has been on a tear lately, settling slightly lower today to $73.56 in New York, and Brent crude in London slipping 21 cents to $76.30 a barrel. Coming up later this hour, we'll be kicking off the new year talking about cars and fake parking tickets. Did you hear about this? That's a thing right now. Lauren Fix will be joining us live later this hour, and on taxes, we'll be kicking off the new year with Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform. But first, Happy New Year. Top-ranked money manager Ken Winans joining us live here now, president and chief investment officer at Winans Investments, which you can find at winansinvestments.com. Ken Winans, also a market historian, author of numerous books, including Investment Atlas 1 and 2, now Investment Atlas 3, Creating Wealth Using Historical Trends. Ken Winans also has his crypto credentials. We're watching Bitcoin pop back above 100,000 recently, right now at around 102,000. Ken Winans is also a Forbes magazine contributor, so be sure to check out his latest article, Things Investors Should Learn from 2024. Ken Winans, Happy New Year.
Frank, Happy New Year as well. And you know what? It's going to be interesting this whole year, this whole earnings season. You and I talked earlier. It's going to be a media-driven year, and the markets will respond as we go through it.
Well, it's great to have you with us here, and look forward to speaking with you on Winning with Winans at 6 o'clock every Monday evening here on 790 KABC to complement this program. But take it from the top, Ken Winans, looks like Santa Claus did not show up on Wall Street, as he usually does at the end of a year, 2024, but he showed up on Main Street, certainly. It was hopefully a joyous holiday season for all of our listeners. Looks like the retailers had a big year. Give us your thoughts about 2024 wrapping up as it did and as we head into 25.
Well, you know, it's funny about the Santa Claus rally. I get asked a lot about it, and all I've told people is that, hey, it just started early, because if we all remember, September was strong, October was strong, November after the election, it was a tear. So the market had gotten ahead of itself, and I think that we're seeing the beginning of this year very similar. Today is a prime example, Frank. We started strong, it pulled back. Tech held on to its gains, but an awful lot of groups did not. And I think it's a bit of wait and see what earnings look like, and everybody's playing that game right now.
All right, so looks like the NASDAQ getting off to a strong start here in 25 with a bullish enthusiasm for AI and cryptos for that matter, right? What are your thoughts here about the tech rally we've seen recently?
Well, it's not just AI. I mean, last year, you and I, we kept talking about the Magnificent Seven, but I'm looking at a lot of the old tech did very, very well today. I mean, names that have not really done all that well in the last couple of years, showing some real strength. I mean, you were talking about the old guys of the dot-com era, the Metas of the world, the Amazons of the world. They all had a very good day. And then I know we'll talk in a bit about crypto, but I was very happy to see Coinbase had a 6% pop today. It had a very rough December. But here's the thing. I'm looking at, if you talked about historical kind of scenarios. If you do not have the rally continue to broaden, and what I mean by that is you have got to see the financials contribute, the retailers, the utility stocks. I know we'll talk later about that. But if we have it narrowing where it's just tech leading everything, that is not a healthy situation. So I'm hoping that as we get through January, my hope would be, in order for this to be under the way I look at the January indicator, positive, up 3%, and a broadening of the rally, then we can look at an extension in 2025 of this bull.
What are your thoughts about this Fed Governor Lisa Cook making news today, basic point blank saying that valuations are elevated in a number of asset classes, including equity and corporate debt markets, where estimated risk premia are near the bottom of their historical distribution, suggesting the markets may be priced to perfection and therefore susceptible to large declines, which could result from bad economic news or a change in investor sentiment, to quote this Fed Governor Lisa Cook, bringing back memories of what we heard from Alan Greenspan years ago about irrational exuberance. Looks like the market largely ignored her comments, although the Dow slipped slightly here at the close today. What are your thoughts on this one?
You know, we're going to have Fed governors giving these concerns. And in fairness to what was said, we have had the S&P 500 since that basically that little mini bear market in 2022. 2023, 2024, we're up about 47%. Earnings have not gone up 47%. Revenues have not gone up 47%. So it is true valuations are higher. But I would be inclined to wait until we get the final numbers for last year from a bulk of companies to determine if the market is in fact overpriced. I am of the opinion that some companies are going to get hit very hard this earnings season, a bit like the old Clint Eastwood movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. There will be some bad misses. But all in all, I just don't see what I would consider to be a topping pattern in this market. Another December article I wrote for Forbes is it's not a top yet. But if, Frank, what I said earlier, if you have more of this kind of action, of the NASDAQ moving ahead and everything else just kind of being back and forth and not making any momentum. That's going to bring back horrible memories of 1999 to me. We don't want that world.
All right. Are you feeling bullish as we launch into 25?
I'm bullish from the standpoint that I think I've identified the leadership groups that are going to be, let's call them the Trump stocks. I think the Trump stocks will have a very good year. But Frank, you and I know nothing goes straight up. And I think there will be volatility. Older bull markets have this happen. They get extremely volatile. I've been telling my investors, if last August concerns you, if this last December concerns you, then you have too much in equities and you're watching it too close. But no, all in all, trend is your friend, and the trend is still up in this market as far as I'm concerned.
All right. We're watching bond yields rise. At what point does that compete with the stock market? The yield in the 10-year note is back up to 4.62%.
Well, rates, it's interesting. When you think about what's happened from 2022 to now, we had for a very long time rates near zero, 20-year Treasury bonds paying around 2%. None of that was historically average. We've just had a resetting. I think I was mentioning to you earlier, Frank, that my 98-year-old father just had his birthday, and I was teasing him about what a mortgage rate was back in 1927 was largely the same mortgage rate we have today. So the point being, we've normalized rates. But I would say this about bonds. It's funny that the Fed governor, as much as was cautioning about corporate bonds, I am far more concerned about the valuation on municipal bonds, especially blue state bonds. I think there's some real tough waters ahead for that area.
Happy birthday to your dad listening today in Orange County. All of us wish you a very happy birthday and wish you all the best. And honored to be here live on the air with Ken Winans, the one and only Ken Winans, money manager, top-ranked money manager at WinAnsInvestments.com, and also host of Winning with Winans, which you can hear every Monday night here at 6 p.m. on your favorite station, 790 KABC. Also, I mentioned one of the makeup brands, and my father always used to take note of when women's products and makeup stocks moved up, because he took it as a bullish sign for the economy and the market.
Hey, all I can tell you is around Las Vegas, around the holidays, I was in shock to see these lines outside Cartier stores, Hermes stores. I mean, they were saying that luxury brands are dead. That's not what I saw in Vegas. Maybe people were winning a lot of money on the sports betting, but they were alive and well. No, Frank, now with that being said, there's a lot of inflation right now that's affecting the consumer stocks, and that includes a lot of these kind of cosmetic companies. So it's going to be hit and miss there, but very clearly, just like it was with retailers, the companies that have a good beat on this economy are going to do fine. The others are not. So it is a stock picker's market.
All right, let's get to the exciting stuff now. Crypto, Bitcoin back above 100,000. In fact, above 102,000 here at last check. Ethereum is hovering at around 3,700, and Doge. Let's not forget about Doge, which had its run up this past year, now at 39 cents. You have your crypto credentials here, Ken Winans. So give us your thoughts on crypto here in 25.
For me, it's very simple. When I'm looking at Bitcoin or Ethereum, as long as the price of those two cryptos are trading above their 20-week moving average, I'm a bull on them, and they both still are. What we had happen in December was simply a pullback off of the high. These things now trend like other types of investments. If you are inclined to want to buy crypto, you want to try to buy the dips. Now, what I would say is this. Everybody needs to take a big step back, look at their investment strategy, their trading strategies, and get things in place over the course of this month. I still think that for most stock investors, if you're looking for a good crypto play, I still think Coinbase is the company that you would probably want to, certainly consider adding to your portfolio. But it is extremely volatile, Frank. So, it's a bit like when I went to the rodeo in Vegas. You're watching these guys riding the bucking Broncos. That's how it is with Bitcoin or Coinbase. You just got to hang on.
All right, and then MicroStrategy taking a bigger stake in Bitcoin. That's a name that's getting a lot of attention. This guy, Michael Saylor. What do we need to know about MicroStrategy?
I think you're going to see this happening with a lot of investment pools. They're going to begin to, basically, they have a part in their portfolio for commodities. They're adding things like Bitcoin in their commodity strategies. I fully expect we're going to hear a lot more of that. But remember, too, the road to regulatory reform within crypto is not going to be a straight line. It's going to have its bumps. I mean, let's see what actually the Trump administration comes up with. But as far as for people who have made a commitment that I want this in my portfolio, the managers are starting to do it.
All right, we see MicroStrategy stock today had a big pop, up nearly $40 at $379. What about Coinbase, which has also seen a pop recently, and some of these other crypto-related stocks?
Well, I like the exchanges because I'm not being forced to pick a crypto token. I'm being forced to play the crypto world. One thing I like about Coinbase, I mean, if it's true what I read last month, that Charles Schwab, once there is they're calling it regulatory clarity. Once that is in place, they're going to, I mean, supposedly they're going to open the door to allow their clients, these brokerage house clients, to be able to start doing crypto. I think the way they will do it will be through firms like Coinbase that already have the system set up with the wallets and the exchange mechanisms. They're not going to try to reinvent the wheel.
All right, Hollywood award season underway. The studio's back in focus. People starting to pay attention to all of that. And this merger deal involving Fubo today, and one of the Disney entities sending Fubo stock higher today. Obviously, Hollywood still reeling from the strike last year, and still a slow recovery there. We saw Fran Drescher, the president of the Screen Actors Guild, on the red carpet of the Hollywood last night, the Golden Globe ceremony in Beverly Hills. So what are your thoughts about these media-related names here?
Well, the one that I still enjoy, I mean, actually, it's funny because you now have to think about Amazon as a media company, which is so interesting because you obviously have that going on. And then one of my all-time favorites has been a core holding for a long time, Netflix. So anything that is in the new area, but in the older, more conventional space, I mean, you know, Frank, or you and I talked to Ty Warren, a gentleman who's been in Hollywood for a very long time. 2 months ago, he was on one of our shows, and he flatly said, you know, we're going to continue to see consolidation in the area, and certainly as we found out from the election, there's going to be massive consolidation in conventional media from the standpoint of news. So I think that's word for the day going forward. It's not going to be surprised to see more of this.
At this point, Ken Winans, here we are in 2025. We wish all of our listeners a very happy, healthy, and prosperous new year. At this point, Ken Winans, where are you putting money now and/or taking it off the table?
You know what's interesting? As I went through and I looked at the list today, and it boggles the mind to see that utilities are doing so incredibly well right now. You don't expect this group to be that, but I think a lot of it's tied to the tremendous amount of energy that's going to be needed for the AI world, the crypto mining world, and all that. So I just, you know, it's kind of funny, Frank. I rarely talk about an ETF, but for people who are just not familiar with wanting to get into utilities, I mean, take a good look at something like XLU. It is basically an iShare that is just focused on utilities. I would take a good look there. And then last but not least, I still think there's going to be a fairly decent housing season. Take a look at some of the builders like Lennar, LEN, and Pulte, PHM. I think that mortgage rates are going to be what they are. People are feeling good about what's going on in their stock portfolios. I think the housing market's going to have a good year.
Ken, as always, I wish we had more time. Unfortunately, we will have more time in the 6 o'clock hour tonight on Winning with Winans, which you host every Monday night right here at 6 p.m. on your favorite station, 790 KABC. So look forward to picking up the conversation and taking a look back at 24 and a look ahead to 25. Ken Winans, top-ranked money manager Ken Winans, President and Chief Investment Officer at Winans Investments, which you can find at winansinvestments.com. Ken, talk to you at 6, and thank you very much for joining us live here this hour.
Thank you, Frank, and Happy New Year's to the audience.
Happy New Year to all, and let's get right out to the freeways now on 790 KABC. Frank Mottek here. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Now, with the U.S. debt at more than $36 trillion and climbing, a possible recession on the horizon, and the development of the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets like your cash savings and retirement accounts with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement and the markets and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and your silver. Give Joe Morgan a call at 1-800-753-8534. Mention Frank Mottek, and you can get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. Call now 1-800-753-8534 or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Happy New Year. We are doing it live at 4 o'clock, doing more at 4 for you here in 25. We plan to survive and thrive in 25, so great to have you back with us here. Stocks mixed today at the close to kick off the new week. The Dow down 26 points, settling at 42,707. The S&P 500 of 33 at 5,975. And the NASDAQ, the star of the show today, up 243 points at 19,865. Looks like the NASDAQ having its best start to a year since 2009. The S&P 500 having its best start to a new year since 2018. And indeed, the Dow is off to its best start since 2021. We did see some of the steam come out of today's rally after the Fed Governor Lisa Cook warned that the stock market is susceptible to a large decline, in her words. The Fed Reserve Governor Lisa Cook coming out with a warning today that several markets, including equities, appear priced for perfection and vulnerable to large declines in the event of bad economic news or a shift in investor sentiment. Didn't do much to cool off the market rally today. The Dow slipped 26 points, and the other averages ended the day higher. Bond yields have been edging higher. Looks like the yield in the 10-year note now at 4.62%. That's the one that impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates, which have been moving up lately. Looks like bank stocks getting a lift today with the Citigroup shares of 2%, B of A up 1%, Wells Fargo shares also up about 1%. The price of oil taking a bit of a breather following its recent run-up. Oil in New York down 40 cents at $73.56 a barrel, and Brent crude in London down 21 cents at $76.30 a barrel. MicroStrategy shares popping today up nearly $40 at $379 and change. Netflix moving higher up 74 cents to $881.79. Fubo moving higher today by nearly $4 at $506, a jump of 251%. And Disney shares slipping 11 cents to $111.05. Micron Technology shares among the winners today up 10%. And let's see how the Magnificent One is doing. NVIDIA up nearly $5 today at $149 and change. And now the latest news for you here in 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good afternoon. The new year is beginning with tax relief in sight, with the extension of the Trump tax cuts on the horizon as President Trump is getting set to be sworn into office for his second term on January 20th. President Trump's election was certified today in Congress. Joining us live now to talk taxes, including what's happening at the IRS and another scandal there. Joining us live now, Grover Norquist, the president of Americans for Tax Reform. Good afternoon and Happy New Year, Grover Norquist.
Absolutely. Good to be with you. I was at the Capitol in an area the speaker invited some friends to sit in and watch the count as to who won the Electoral College. So I was pleasantly surprised, and Trump won.
Well, congratulations on that honor. It certainly signals that taxes are an important issue as the administration comes in and as the Republican-led Congress deals with tax issues. What's the outlook on taxes here in 2025?
Well, it looks a lot better for two reasons. One, Speaker Johnson was reelected. In the past, there'd be 2 or 3 or 8 Republicans who thought they could get on TV, and if they voted against the speaker and announced that this was somehow going to help make the world a better place. And of course, it didn't. If you take away the Republican majority by having a handful of Republicans not join the other Republicans, you have no power, not any ability to get anything done. And there seemed to be some growing up going on. And that did not happen this time. It could have. There were a few people who said, we may not vote for Johnson. At the end of the day, both Johnson and President Trump spoke with them. And all the Republicans, except one guy from Kentucky, voted for Johnson. They said, we're going to get things done. We're going to get taxes cut, and we've got to work as a team. So Johnson winning was a really good sign. Second, the president announced there was some question, do we have 2 bills this year, one on the border, one on taxes? Or do we do them in one bill? Because you can have, obviously, the money needed to fix the wall that the Biden people have allowed to atrophy or to be smashed up. That's not a lot of money. And you can put that into the budget in where you're otherwise cutting taxes and reducing spending. and we can put them together and pass it quickly without dividing people up. So with the president's leadership on that and the Speaker of the House committed to one bill where we say, build the wall or rebuild the wall, and we, at the same time, we're going to cut taxes, and we're going to do some serious budget reduction and expand energy production in the country that will raise more revenue, because more energy means more revenue.
On there live with America's leading taxpayer advocate, Grover Norquist, the president of Americans for Tax Reform. What is considered a lot of money in Washington these days, Grover Norquist? And what about the deficit and tackling that big issue this time around?
Well, they need to do two things. The best way to tackle deficit spending is to have strong economic growth. If you grow at 4% a year instead of 3% a year, you end up reducing the deficit significantly by about $3.5 trillion over the decade, simply because you have more growth, more jobs, more income, more revenue. You have to have fewer people on welfare. If you can grow it 2% more for a year, that's about $7-8 trillion that you're in a decade that you're reducing. So we reduced the debt from more than 100% of GDP at the end of World War II down to about 20%. We didn't do it with tax increases. We did it with strong economic growth that brought in more revenue and reduced some of the spending that would otherwise be there on welfare.
On there live with Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform. And what about the role of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy now on this DOGE initiative, Department of Government Efficiency? What do you expect to come out of that?
A lot. This is very exciting. There have been efforts in the past to think about how to reform government. Nixon had an effort. Of course, the Democrats in Congress would have nothing to do with it. Reagan had the effort with the Grace Commission. The Democrats didn't want to do too much of that. They did control the House, not the Senate, but the House during the Reagan years. But what he did get some done by executive order, things that were done. And even through Congress, there was some savings. What we have now that changed is Twitter or X, because now when we find fraud or waste or checks going out to people that don't exist, or at least they don't exist in the United States, CBS can't tell you, or the establishment press cannot say there's nothing to see here, which is what's happened in the past. This isn't terribly interesting. This isn't important. We may mention it once on the nightly news, but it's not going to be talked about at length. If Musk says, here's something you ought to know about, and sends it out, tens of millions of Americans can see it immediately. And that is going to put real pressure on the House and Senate and on the executive branch to fix some of this wasteful spending. And there's a lot to be done. The frustration isn't that we can't find it. We do find it, but we haven't been able to keep focused on reducing it. And that's what this commission, I think, can really do to be helpful.
All right, turning now to another matter that you've been following there at Americans for Tax Reform, what's happening at the IRS and an apparent new scandal being reported involving the leaker of President Trump's taxes, who worked for reportedly a Biden donor. Tell us what we need to know about that.
Oh, dear. Another week, another IRS scandal. We're talking about DOGE doing investigation. There actually are inspector generals for every department of government who go in and take a look and find out whether, where there's waste, where there's mismanagement. And so and there's one that deals with the IRS, the Treasury Department and the IRS. And they regularly put this out. And at Americans for Tax Reform, we translate it into English as opposed to bureaucrat language and share it with people. But there are piles of study about the IRS, the abuse that they have, the unseriousness with which they take the privacy of your information. The latest report out has pictures of people's private papers stacked up. Things are supposed to be put into bins to be burned or shredded, and the bins are open. There's stacks of papers that are not secured, things that are supposed to be destroyed, not just sitting around. And the people there, when asked by the investigators, well, don't you have a policy where you're supposed to protect this stuff? They said, nobody ever told us that. They literally are not informing the workers there of the importance of keeping people's material, their social security numbers, secure from anybody from China to the guy down the street. So there's real outrage there. And of course, as you were bringing up, there was a gentleman who worked for a left-wing think tank who is all over the IRS as a contractor, taking out tens of thousands of people's personal information, their tax returns, and handing them over to a left-wing group to do who knows what with it. And they're supposed to go to jail for 5 years for every one of the 10,000 people that he violated. They only charged him with one, that was stealing Trump's tax returns. And of course, there wasn't anything wrong with Trump's tax returns. They were just stealing it and handing it out so that they could make it sound like there was something problematic. But what's a problem is that person should be in prison for the rest of his life. And in point of fact, the left-wing group, ProPublica, pretends to be a press outfit. It's not. It's a left-wing group, ProPublica, something like that. They did this once before, and the IRS didn't even demand the return of the material. They haven't demanded the return of the material that was stolen. I worry that Biden's going to pardon this guy. He ought to be in prison. He ought to rot in prison the rest of his life.
Thanks for shedding light on that important story. I see Real Clear Investigations has done a lot of work on this as well, and thanks for staying on this one. We'll continue to follow it, and apparently he's well connected to a big name company that has employed others involved in some scandals. So we're going to keep an eye on that one there. Grover Norquist, thank you very much for joining us live here. The president of Americans for Tax Reform, kicking off the new year 2025 with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC. Good afternoon and Happy New Year. Time to get into gear in 2025. Hard to tell what's real or fake these days with the rise of artificial intelligence and all kinds of AI-generated materials and indeed scams. Now, fake parking tickets are a thing. Have you heard about this? Well, let's talk cars, fake parking tickets, and the whole works now. Kick off the new year with our go-to car expert, Lauren Fix, editor-in-chief of Car Coach and the host of the Total Car Score podcast. Lauren Fix, Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. Happy New Year to all of your listeners while you're driving safely home. One of the things I want you to think about is when you go to park at your next event, maybe you're going to a friend's house and you're parking on the street, and you come out to find the very disappointing parking ticket underneath your wiper blade. Before you go and get aggravated and think that I'm just going to pay it on my phone, there's a QR code, I'll make it simple, be forewarned, most cities and municipalities do not use QR codes. So if there is a QR code on the parking ticket, it's entirely possible it's a scam. Now, it started in Canada and it's made its way down to the U.S. It's actually globally everywhere. We're hearing all kinds of reports from all over California, all over literally every state, where people are finding parking tickets. They get frustrated, anybody does, and they want to pay it and get rid of it. And many times you'll click on it, maybe it's a QR code or a URL where you go to pay. If you ever find a QR code, that's a sign that it's most likely a fake. And another thing is it asks you to pay via PayPal or to use your checking account. Wait till you get home and get in front of a desktop or a laptop. Find your local municipality. It'll ask you to type in your license plate and the type, your make and model of your car. And when you do, if it doesn't show up, it's entirely possible it's a fake. You can even call the police department and say, I'd like to check on this ticket because I don't know why I got it, or it made no sense for whatever reason. You can also take it, you don't want to go to court for no reason. I doubt there's a court date on it. Typically there isn't when it's a parking ticket. But they're finding that what they're doing is they're using these QR codes as links to get into your finances. And we've already had a few people get scammed for a lot of money. So please be careful if you get a parking ticket.
And it looks like an express lane scam is out there, too, where people are getting texts designed to deceive drivers in entering banking or credit card information. So we need to warn people about that, too. Some people are getting these texts, so do not rush to click on these links or respond. I think you've just given some terrific advice there to take a deep breath and and count to 4 or whatever, and get to a spot where you can verify that this is correct. But do not click on the links that you're sent out of the clear blue sky from suspicious entities claiming to be with the DMV or with the Highway Patrol or whatever. So we're on the air live with Lauren Fix,
right,
or go
especially
to
if it's a text.
Yeah, exactly. Text, but that is part of it. And those QR codes, as you mentioned, also very, very suspicious and need to be treated very, very carefully. I was in a 2025 vehicle for the first time over the holidays, so the 25s are on the road, as you well know, having covered the LA Auto Show and other auto shows, and you get to ride all these great new cars. Let's get to the exciting stuff here, Lauren Fix, and tell us what's been turning your head these days.
There's a lot of new product out. I think we're going to see a lot of changes coming up. President Trump has already said that as soon as he's in office, he's going to remove that $7,500 federal tax credit, as well as the mandate. I expect that their Department of Transportation, the EPA, and everyone are going to go after the California Air Resources Board, except I don't think they're going to wait like they did during the last time. I think they're going to come after them pretty quickly. And the reason is there should never be one state telling the rules for others. So how does that impact cars and car prices? Well, right now there's a lot of cars being sold that are electric vehicles, but if that federal tax credit goes away, the incentive goes away, and manufacturers don't want to build something they're already taking a loss on, and without that incentive, it's going to be difficult to sell them. My guess is you're going to see a lot of entry-level price vehicles coming back. There were no vehicles that were under $20,000. The average price is about $25,000 to enter into a new car market. I think you're going to see a lot of entry-level vehicles coming in and maybe less choices of the higher-end trim levels until things settle down with the price of gasoline and interest rates and everything becomes easier to afford, which is what he's promised, and it's going to take time for that to happen. I think you should be very aware of purchasing an electric vehicle if you don't need to. The problem is going to be if you purchase one, good luck selling it. People aren't going to want it. If you lease one, that's your best choice, because at the end of the lease, you can leave that vehicle back at the dealer and let them deal with it. But be very aware on these lease programs. At the end of the lease, there might be a lease payout, and it could be a lot of money, thousands of dollars. So make sure to read that small print. What happens at the end of my lease? How much do I owe? Many dealers will say, oh, just drop the car off. No. There's absolutely a fee involved to sign off on the lease unless you release another one of these electric vehicles. So make sure to ask those questions. If you're unsure, you don't have to sign the bottom line today. You can take it to your accountant. They can explain it to you. But a good finance department should explain it to you. Hey, at the end, there's a $2,500 fee. You may say, what? But there was zero down. Well, they're going to try and get their money somehow, so they'll get it at the end of the lease. So be very careful. Electric
vehicles and indeed self-driving vehicles will be hot topics this year. You saw that Waymo story where somebody was late and actually missed a flight because their self-driving Waymo taxi kept going around in circles, and the person was trapped in there. Any other interesting self-driving stories, and will self-driving become more of a thing this year?
I think one of the biggest things with self-driving is that you're asking a computer to get you to your destination, and if it feels it can't get there, it will drive around in circles. I'm not a fan of self-driving cars. If you want to ride in one to try it out and you're not in a rush to get anywhere, great. But keep in mind, you'll have the ability to opt out on a lot of these Ubers and Waymo taxis. I think that you're going to see more technology coming into play. The Consumer Electronics Show is happening right now. There's a lot of new technology coming from BMW and Toyota and Honda, and a lot of that has to do with more assisted driving. So there's no such thing as actually self-driving cars, although Elon Musk says it with autopilot, and with his relationship with President Trump, I'm sure he's going to try and push that along further because he wants the robo-taxi. But just keep in mind, they don't always do what you ask them to do, like any computer, any phone, or any electronic device.
Works great. Technology works great when it works. And before I let you off the hook, you did a great job on this other story here. The EPA is letting a company build a road using radioactive waste. Tell us some more about that.
Yeah, this is very interesting. There's a new product that they've been using on roadways, and I'm really unhappy about this, and I wanted to bring this to people's attention. I'm not a chemist, but it's called phosphogypsum, and it's basically what's in radon gas. And they're using that material. The EPA has approved it to use it in roadways. Currently, the first section of road is in Florida, which I'm actually surprised Ron DeSantis allowed this to happen. But then again, you can't be involved in everything. But this pilot project says it's cheaper for roadways because they have all this waste sitting around it. But the thing is, if you have an accident on the side of the road, you have to get out on that road. You're now standing in the phosphogypsum, which can cause cancer and it's hazardous to humans. It is literally radioactive road waste.
Well, we're going to check that out on your podcast. Lauren, thank you very much for joining us live here, editor-in-chief of Car Coach and the co-host of the Total Car Score podcast. Lauren Fix live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC.
If you're listening to sports mixed with pop culture, sprinkled with celebrity interviews, then your earbuds are enjoying the Rich Eisen Show podcast.
None other than Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers, Detroit Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs. It is great to see you, Brian Dawkins. And there he is, Justin Jefferson, Kyle Brandt.
Wow, Jodie Foster was on the show. I missed that one. So Clarice Starling is sitting here saying, well, should I start Greg Jennings? I don't know. He's tough against the Vikings. See, this is what I'm talking about. It's really cool hang here.
The Rich Eisen Show. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.